Ultrakill is the game with the most rocket launcher ever. Sure, a ton of other games have their own lovely takes on the weapon, whether it be the modern-day classic Doom Eternal or your favorite boomer shooter Dusk. However, if Santa came up to me one day and gave me the choice to own just one rocket launcher from all of the games I've played thus far, I would have to choose Ultrakill's. I know, it's quite the bold claim to make, and yeah, I can probably guess what most of you are thinking. What the hell is an Ultrakill, and why would its rocket launcher be so good compared to the countless others in gaming? Well then, in order to answer all of that, let's firstly dive into some more familiar territory, just so we can put things into perspective. Here is the Soldier from Team Fortress 2. Some people love him because he's extremely versatile, meaning you're guaranteed to see at least one soldier on each team in every game you play. Others enjoy him because he's fairly tanky, meaning your risk of respawn, aka ROR, is a fair bit lower than that of, say, the Spy class. Well, I love him due to the simple fact that, yeah, he uses rocket launchers, and quite a lot of them actually. Each one has its own unique quirks which set them apart from each other, so there's definitely a rocket launcher for everyone when it comes to playing as the soldier. However, I personally enjoy using just one of them over the rest, and calling this particular rocket launcher my favorite would be somewhat of an understatement. Introducing the Direct Hit. In my subjectively objective opinion, this is the benchmark that the rocket launchers of gaming should look up to. It does 25% more damage than the regular rocket launcher, meaning 4 out of the 9 classes in this game get completely annihilated in a single point-blank blast. Furthermore, its rockets fly through the air 80% faster than ones from regular rocket launchers, meaning the Pyro class will have a harder time air blasting your rockets right back at you. All of this power at the cost of just a single downside, because the developers of TF2 understand that with great power comes great responsibility. Or in this case, a great 70% reduction in blast radius. I'm sure most of you had already guessed this would be the case. See, this rocket launcher is called the Direct Hit because it requires you to do exactly that if you want to actually kill anything with it. It is legitimately the perfect way to balance the thing, and I think that hitting enemies directly with projectiles is much more satisfying than spamming them with splash damage. But I'm sure we can all agree on the idea that rocket launchers are such an archetypal weapon in video games due to their main defining feature. There's just something so satisfying about watching a thing you shot cause giant kablooies, and rocket launchers are meant to be one of the best things at doing that. More importantly, rocket launchers allow players to do something which sounds horrible on paper, but just makes sense once applied in gameplay. That is, missing your shots, yet still dealing damage. And so, while the direct hits buffs are really awesome in the eyes of some people, that 70% splash radius reduction really hurts when it comes to dealing with the inevitable, oh so dreaded, skill issue. However, where the children falter and go back to their spam-fest ways, the real gamers look for the next best thing instead. Nice. Player expression through skill is awesome, and those of you who watched my video on the most video game mechanic ever would know that I'm a huge fan of exactly that. Obviously, air shots are a perfect way to flex your gamer skills, and the TF2 devs know this because your rockets will deal even more damage when hitting enemies that are flying in the air. Whether you're showing some of those sick clips to a longtime TF2 veteran or someone who's never touched a first-person shooter in their life, I'm fairly certain that both will be pretty impressed with what you can do. But I digress. What in the world does any of this have to do with the most rocket launcher ever? Well, why don't we just take this and put it in this? Furthermore, let's add a couple of changes to it in order to make the weapon actually fit ultrakill rather than just doing a boring copy and paste. Instead of reducing the explosion's damage radius like the direct hit, why don't we make ultrakill's rocket launcher simply deal no damage at all to enemies missed, and have the rockets create a cute little shove instead. However, if you do hit enemies directly, nice, we got the explosion back. And remember how the direct hits air shots deal extra damage? Well, why should we simply be satisfied with that when we can get an even bigger, juicier explosion as the cherry on top? And hey, you wanna know what the best thing about all of this is? Well, there are tons of ways to get enemies airborne in ultrakill, meaning this isn't something reserved to a rare few moments in your gaming session. From knocking enemies into the air with the concussive blast of your ground slam, to reeling them in like fish on your grappling hook, hitting air shots with your rocket launcher isn't just a matter of landing them, it's also about setting up a situation to control the chances of landing one in the first place. Air shots are awesome. Alright, before I get carried away with this single mechanic alone, let's hold on for a minute. So, there's a saying where imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and this applies quite well to ultrakill as it's basically the game's MO to a certain degree, with the rocket launcher being no exception to that. However, ultrakill does much more than merely taking inspiration from other franchises and calling it a day. No, this game is called ultrakill for a reason, and it goes out of its way to ramp things up to the next level. Let me turn your attention to weapon mods. You may know them best from games like Doom Eternal, where its own take on the rocket launcher has two alternate firing modes, one that allows you to lock on and burst fire enemies, and another that lets you remotely detonate rockets mid-flight. They may seem fairly simple in a game where your DB shotgun doubles up as a flaming grappling hook, but all things considered, these two rocket launcher mods do their jobs just fine. Now, I'm obviously bringing this up as weapon mods are another aspect ultrakill includes within its arsenal as well. So, what alternate firing modes does the ultrakill rocket launcher have? Well, on one hand, you can shoot out a gigantic cannonball, and on the other hand, you can literally time stop your rockets in place a la Dio Brando. I agree. These are definitely some of the last things you'd think a person would be able to do with a rocket launcher, and yet, that's what separates this beauty apart from all the rest. From setting up traps enemies can fall on, to shooting your own projectiles with a ricocheted coin, to parrying your own cannonballs through the power of CBT, you can have even more fun with ultrakill's rocket launcher than just shooting at your enemies. Creative freedom and skill expression is one of ultrakill's greatest strengths, and its rocket launcher is just one of the many ways you can prove that. Plus, you know a weapon's good if you can roleplay Dio with it. Yeah, ultrakill is the game with the most rocket launcher ever, and I hope the reasons I've provided have convinced you to think the same. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed the Was that a Discord ping? The original Quake is the pioneer of movement tech, and I'm sure we can all agree on how influential the game has been in shaping the entire FPS genre as a whole. So, a video on rocket launchers would be nothing without Quake's own iconically phallic RL, along with the universally beloved rocket jump. These days, if you're making a movement shooter and it includes a rocket launcher of some sort, you are legally obligated to let players rocket jump. I mean, look, Doom Eternal has some nifty movement tech in it, so rocket jumping shouldn't be out of the... Oh, well, I guess it do be like that. Okay, while Doom Eternal may be lacking in the blast jump department, ultrakill does a great job of filling that void. If we're able to do stuff like this with our shotgun of all things, it's only natural that the rocket jumping of ultrakill must be just as nutty as its predecessors. So, rocket jumping is definitely not this launcher's strong suit either. Being able to pogo with the thing is still a viable movement option, but don't expect the rocket jumping we get in, say for instance, Quake Live. Though, to be fair, even rocket jumping in its full glory would be greatly overshadowed by the multitudes of other movement tech already present within the game. I mean, why rocket jump off a wall when you can do this with it instead? So, despite all the cool things we've talked about in regards to Ultrakill's rocket launcher, I guess it's disqualified from being the most rocket launcher, eh? If only there was something even wackier, something even crazier you could do with rockets in order to flip the bird at gravity and soar through the air. Did you know that in Ultrakill, you can surf on your rockets? By simply shooting out a rocket, freezing it in place, and hopping on, you temporarily unlock your free trial of Ultrakill Flight Simulator. Unfortunately, while this is good and all, you may soon find out that hopping onto a rocket is physically impossible whilst in the middle of falling to your doom. Fear not, however, as there is a much faster and more efficient way of boarding rockets in any situation. As long as you're free falling, whether in the air or underwater, and have the rocket launcher's freeze mode toggled on, simply look down slightly, dash while firing a rocket at the same time, then unfreeze. Do note that the window of time between the dash rocket input and the unfreeze input is fairly generous, so there's no risk of speeding up your already developing carpal tunnel from playing Ultrakill. There you have it. Ultrakill is the game with the most rocket launcher ever. And with the information I've given you today, I hope you agree with this idea as well. From the simple joys of hitting a clean air shot, to the deep well that is mastering all the tech it has to offer, I'd like to think this rocket launcher will manage to leave a lasting impact on everyone that gets their hands on it. But of course, on the off chance you know about an even more rocket launcher ever than the most rocket launcher ever, feel free to tell me about it down in the comments. Either way, if you find my ramblings somewhat interesting, perhaps give the video a like. And if you're new here, why not subscribe? For now though, this is literally all I wrote, so I suppose I'll catch you all in the next one. Until then, take care.